If you have not heard of the film producer turned real estate developer Nile Niami, who is responsible for building some of the coolest and most ridiculous single-family houses in Los Angeles, then you're in for a treat with this video. There has been this trend of these massive, ultra-luxury spec homes being built in LA for the past 10 years or so, where developers are buying some of the most premium land on the planet. They're building monster homes on that land, and then they're trying to sell those homes for $50 million, $150 million, or in the case of Nile's most recent creation, $500 million. And yes, you heard that right, that's $500 million for a house. In today's video, we're going to talk about who Nile Niami is, we're going to talk about the state of the luxury housing market in LA, and then at the end, we're going to talk about the massive 105,000 square foot mega mansion that Nile is in the final stages of building. Some of you may have seen that Nile recently did a tour of that mansion on another YouTuber's channel, but at the end, he did an interview with the YouTuber, and the interview got super weird, so at the end of this video, I'm going to give my thoughts and opinions on how that interview went. If you're new to my channel, my name is Scott. I'm a real estate investor out of Arizona, and I primarily focus on residential house flips and buy and hold commercial, but on this channel, we talk all things real estate. Before we hop into the video today, if you're not already a subscriber, think about hitting the subscribe button down below, because according to my YouTube stats, only like 20% of the people who watch these videos are actually subscribers. If you don't feel like subscribing, that's totally fine, but if you wouldn't mind at least hitting the like button down below, that would really help to support me, this video, and my channel. Let's talk about who Nile Niami is for anybody who hasn't heard of this guy before. Nile was born in Bel Air in 1968, which makes him 52 years old today. The first chapter of his working life was in Hollywood, where he focused first on makeup and special effects. Then he later progressed into being a film producer, where he produced a total of 15 films, including Galaxis, Point Blank, and The Patriot. He wrapped up producing his last couple of movies in 2001, where he made a career change and started focusing on making money in real estate. He started doing more cheap fix and flips on condos and houses in the LA suburbs, but then he later progressed into doing more luxury and extravagant development projects. Nile had his first home run when he sold one of his mansions to the Winklevoss twins in 2012 for $18 million. After that success, he sold a $39 million new build house to P. Diddy in 2014. By 2016, he bought, built, and sold another monster mansion for $38 million. And then in 2017, another one of his projects went, but this time to Floyd Mayweather for $26 million. Through all these masterpieces that he created and all of the success that he had, he created a name for himself as one of the most respected luxury home builders in LA. As a real estate investor and developer myself, I remember continuing to hear his name come up again and again and again over the years as he continued to knock these homes out of the park. And something important to note here is that he was building these projects as spec homes. A spec home is a home that an investor or a builder builds from the ground up with the intention of selling at some point later for a profit. They call it a spec home, which is short for speculative, which is a very normal thing for investors to do, but it's very rare and risky to do in these luxury home builds because the pool of buyers at a $10+ million price point is really small. His two most wild and ambitious creations to date were first a home that he called Opus, which was in Beverly Hills, and this one was a 20,000 square foot contemporary home that had 7 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms, 2 swimming pools, a wine tasting room, a champagne vault, and a 10-car museum. This place was so over the top that he even included a gold-wrapped Lamborghini and a gold-wrapped Rolls-Royce with the purchase of the home. The Opus house was priced originally at $100 million back in 2017. It took him 3 years to sell the place, and he finally ended up accepting an offer for only $48 million. But if you think that he went big on Opus, just wait until you hear about his latest spec build, and that one's called The One. This house is so over the top and special that I reserved a spot later in this video to talk all about it. Let's change gears really quick because I want to make a point to talk about the luxury housing market in LA as a whole. Los Angeles is an incredibly expensive place to buy real estate, and it's been that way basically forever. If you look on Zillow right now, there are currently 161 available homes in Los Angeles that are priced over $10 million. If you change that filter to look at homes that are priced over $20 million, there's still 59 homes available in Los Angeles at that price or higher. And if you drill down just a little bit further and you look at the price point that Nile is typically asking for his home, homes, so you're looking on Zillow in Los Angeles at homes that are priced over $50 million. Look, there's still 19 houses that are currently on the market priced over $50 million, with the most expensive one asking $100 million. That's pretty hard to wrap your head around when you realize that you can get basically a palace in many other parts of the world for just a couple of $1,000,000, but this is just par for the course for LA. But even though there's homes listed for sale in this price point, and yes, there are homes selling in this price point as well, the Los Angeles luxury real estate market has actually been struggling for a while. A few notable sales include when Lori Loughlin listed in 2019 for $35 million, but then sold it a year later for only $18 million. Then there's Ellen DeGeneres, who recently listed her home for $40 million, but ultimately ended up selling it for only $33 million, which was $7 million less than she was asking. And then there's that story that came out recently where the co-founder of Uber bought a house out there for $43 million, but what's crazy is the seller was asking over $75 million for that house. These are just a few examples of how the luxury housing market in LA has changed, and it's definitely impacting those developers like Nile Niami who are shooting for the stars on every house project that they do. Speaking of shooting for the stars, it's time that we talk about the one. After almost 10 years in construction, Nile is about to put a home on the market that is unlike any other house ever built in history. This house is in one of the nicest pockets of Bel Air, sitting at one of the highest elevations in Bel Air, and by far will have the biggest price tag compared to any other home to ever hit the market in Bel Air or anywhere else for that matter. Let's start by talking about the size of the home. This house has just over 100,000 square feet. It's sitting on an 8-acre lot. There are 21 bedrooms, 42 bathrooms, and the house includes just about every type of amenity that you can imagine. Inside, amenities include a movie theater, a 4-lane bowling alley, several bars, a wine tasting room, 2 art galleries, a 50-car garage, a swimming pool, a juice bar, and a nightclub. Outside, you have a running track, 6 additional swimming pools, and a sky deck with a putting green. Nile bought the property back in 2012 for $28 million, and at the time there was just an old rundown house on there that needed to be torn down. He proceeded to build the largest home that's ever been built, with the next runner-up being this one called the Manor at Holmby Hills, which is only 55,000 square feet in comparison. Price-wise, Nile is also going over the top, and over the course of the past several years, as he's been rumoring that this house is nearing completion, he's also rumored that he plans to list it for a whopping $500 million. His logic actually kind of makes sense, and that is that there's people out there who are willing to pay $500 million for a yacht, so there's probably also people out there who'd be willing to pay $500 for an estate like this in LA. The house is still not listed for sale yet, even though it's been on the verge of completion for years now, but there are rumors now that people are putting pressure on Nile to list the house for a much more realistic number of $340 million. That's still going to be a tough number to achieve though, when you realize that last year the most expensive home that was sold was the one that Jeff Bezos bought for $165 million. Regardless of whether or not he gets this price, you have to appreciate and respect the amount of work and stress that probably went into putting together a deal of this magnitude, and for that I tip my hat to Nile. Alright guys, so we've made it to the point of the video where we're going to talk about that dreaded interview that Nile recently did with that other YouTuber producer Michael after doing a long tour of his spec build, The One. If you saw the interview, you know that it was pretty cringeworthy, and my first recommendation if you didn't see it is to go watch that video now, but in case you don't feel like it, I'll give the cliff notes and my opinion here. How it all started is there's this YouTuber who goes by Producer Michael, and he was offered the opportunity to come out to the house with his camera crew and be the first person to publicly document a full house tour of this property. Michael goes out to meet Nile at the house, and then Nile gives Michael a full house tour of the property, including almost every room, and then Michael goes back to post the video to his YouTube channel with over 1 million subscribers. So after Nile and Michael tour the 105,000 square foot property, which probably took them like all day, they sit down on the couch and they do a quick 18-minute interview, which Michael also posted to his YouTube channel. The primary focus of this interview was for Michael to address one thing that came up several times during the house tour, and that was when Nile continued to say that this house was somehow going to change the world. Michael naturally wanted to know what Nile meant by that, so he gave him this platform to tell his story. Well, that is when things got weird, and they continued to get weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder with every minute that passed during the interview. Nile Nile started by talking about how it's basically not possible to do large gatherings for things like the Grammys or boxing matches anymore, but that this property could host up to 900 people for large events. He says he plans to bring back these large events in a safe and socially distanced way on his property, and he'll invite people to come out and pay the small price of $35,000 per ticket to attend his events. Then he talks about how he's also going to start a TV show where he lives in the house and the viewers get to watch him live in the house, and they get to watch all of these large gatherings being hosted and then seeing him interact with the talent. He brings up the fact that the last Manny Pacquiao boxing match generated $700 million on pay-per-view, and that his house creates a much better event space than the one where that boxing match occurred. Let me just interject with my opinion here, and I'll say that even though he was rambling and talking in circles for like the first 8 minutes of the video, I do generally understand his vision and concept here. I mean, let's face it, this house is so ridiculously massive that it probably is better suited as an event venue compared to a place for a family to live. So if you can turn the house into a place to host some events and make some money out of it, then whatever, more power to him. The first big concern that I have with this interview though is how hard of a time he has painting the picture on how all of this is going to work. I mean, I just spelled it out in a couple of sentences, but it took him 8 minutes to get that part out alone because he keeps just going on and on and on about how much the world needs this house. Then the second part of the interview is where the truth comes out. Nile goes on to admit that a few of his other house projects are in default and facing bankruptcy, and the house that they're sitting in also recently had a notice of default filed on it. So that's the part of the video where your jaw basically just drops to the floor if it hasn't already, because you thought you were looking at this wildly successful entrepreneur and property developer, but you're actually looking at a guy who's in financial ruin. It gets pretty dark and sad as he continues to explain how this house can get him out of his financial troubles, and it even looks like he starts to cry at one point, but it's kind of hard to tell because he was wearing sunglasses the whole time. Nile says that he's starting up a fund where investors from all over the world can buy into this vision and this project, and then they might even get a chance to ride on a plane that he plans on buying. He shares other wild visions for the house as well, like at one point he said he was going to turn singers who have passed away into holograms, put them on pedestals, and then have them perform next to his ex-wife who's also a performer. It's really hard for me to articulate everything that happened during the interview because it was just so peculiar and all over the place. But I will say that I wish he was just flat out honest about the fact that what he was talking about was basically that he wanted to start a charity for himself that people could donate to help get him out of filing for bankruptcy. I don't know how long that video is going to stay up, because if I was Nile, I'd probably be reaching out to producer Michael and saying, please take this interview down because it's damaging my reputation. So if you haven't seen it already, go check it out if you want to see more of what I'm talking about. Nile may be getting a lot of heat nowadays due to the way that he presented himself in that interview with producer Michael, but I'm not one to knock somebody on the internet, and I definitely don't want to kick somebody while they're down. Nile has an incredibly impressive resume, and he's definitely somebody that I look up to a lot for one reason, for his ability to put together a world-class team of contractors and designers and architects. Plus, I have a lot of appreciation for his ability to find funding for these massive projects. What he's doing is not for the faint of heart, and is definitely not something that I'm interested in doing myself, but his story will absolutely go down in history, and a lot of us will be able to learn from him on what to do and what not to do when you're building luxury spec homes. If you enjoyed the video today, guys, just one more reminder to hit the like button down below because that would help me out a lot, and one more reminder to hit the subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber, because I'm posting new videos every week. But that's all I've got for you guys this time, so until next time, see ya!